Something's happening across this country that's absolutely terrifying the Democrats and their lying sycophants in the legacy media. From Texas to Virginia to Florida, in suburb after suburb, district after district, voters are sending an unmistakable message. Not in November, not in some future election, right now, in special elections, in runoffs, in polling booth after polling booth, in districts Democrats thought were safe. And the latest round of polling explains it. Stick with me to the very end of this video because we're going to see the American people are indeed rendering their verdict on the war and the midterms right now. And if you're a Democrat, that verdict is terrifying. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, enjoying yet another glorious day in Trump's golden age that you made possible back in November 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Let's start with the big flip in Grand Prairie, Texas over the weekend. Now, Grand Prairie is a city that went for Kamala Harris by 21 points in 2024. It's a deep blue city, but the Republican Rodney Anderson stunned the woke left. He flipped a Democrat-held city council seat over the weekend. It was a runoff election, so several weeks back, 5 candidates entered this special general election where the Democrat who held the seat ended up in the Texas State House. And so Anderson and Democrat Anna Coca advanced to this past Saturday's runoff. And Anderson's a pretty impressive Republican. He's a former Texas State House member, former chairman of the Dallas County Republican Party, and a 2024 appointee of Governor Greg Abbott to the Judicial Compensation Commission. Coca, she's just your run-of-the-mill Democrat. She's an educator. She's a community advocate. And the Republican pulled it off. He won 51-49. Again, in a district, Harris won by 21 points. Republicans flipped a blue stronghold in a major Dallas-Fort Worth suburb in a special election with low turnout in a Harris plus 21 district. That's not a fluke. This is actually a bit of a trend. Now, we reported last week Republican Jeannie LaCroix flipped a deep blue seat on the Prince William County Board of Supervisors in Virginia. She's the first Republican to hold the Woodbridge seat in 38 years. Democrat nominee Mohammed Sufyan Qasim imploded after embarrassing resurfaced social media posts went viral, and the Democrats saw that they were racist, they were misogynist, and they were doing what they could to try to get him to withdraw, and he wouldn't, and it turned out to be a disaster. And in Florida, Selena Samios defeated a Democrat incumbent in the Royal Palm Beach Village council race that's literally in Trump's backyard. So Florida just continues to get redder and redder. And these flips seem to correspond with the generic ballot polls that are very noticeably moving in the Republicans' favor of late. The latest Clarity Campaign Labs poll has the GOP within 4 of the Democrats. They're a point higher than they were last week. It's even better with the latest TIP poll, the TIPP, that the GOP's within 1 point of the Democrats. I mean, it's insane. A number of analysts have noticed that the GOP has been gaining on the Democrats ever since this war started. And we can see why. You know, as the dust clears from the battlefield, voters are clearly rallying around President Trump and the war effort in Iran. The latest McLaughlin poll asked voters if they believe that the United States military actions against Iran and the leadership of the Iranian regime were necessary and warranted to protect American lives today and in the future. A clear majority, 57% of likely voters, 6 in 10, agreed, while only 33% disagreed. 87% of Republicans were all for it. Only 7% disagreed. Even among voters still undecided about who they're going to vote for in November for the midterms for Congress, they were solidly behind it, 51-29. Among independent voters, 46% agreed that the action was necessary, as compared with only 40% who disagreed. Among Hispanic voters, agreement was 56% to 33%. I think we're seeing the birth of a new solid GOP constituency among Latinos, and even among women. The margin was 47 to 38 in favor. So a solid majority from all demographics supports this war. And keep in mind, that's even after 24/7 propaganda barrage that we're getting from the legacy media. So I think it just goes to show how little attention voters are paying to the media. In fact, all the polling over the last 2 weeks shows the same picture. So back on March 1st, the day after Operation Epic Fury started, already 54% of Americans approved of the war. That was according to Insider Advantage, one of the most accurate pollsters of 2024. A few days later, Trafalgar found the exact same support, 54%. That was back on March 3rd. Fox polling found around 50% support. CBS found 76% of Americans approved of the war, as long as it didn't go beyond a couple of months. And so now the McLaughlin poll is showing 57% support overall. So I think it's very clear here that the Doomers have lost. There's no way around that. The Doomers have lost, at least thus far. Everything right now suggests that the trajectory of this war is fully favoring U.S. and Israeli forces by a mile. And again, the American people see it. I mean, look at this. This is the latest from Rasmussen, just dropped today. 61% of likely voters see the operation as thus far successful. 61%. Now, that number is only going to get higher and higher. And as long as that number sticks, and it should, again, given how astonishing U.S. forces are performing, this war will continue to be supported by a growing number of voters, a very, very clear majority. It'll go from 6 in 10 to probably 7 in 10, as will the support for the GOP. As it turns out, far from hurting the Republicans, this war is clearly helping them. Again, I know you're not going to get that necessarily on in the influencer world. They're all, half of them are flipping out right now. But the GOP, again, the numbers just say it all. The GOP is more popular today than they were before the war began. And for the Democrats, the contrast could not possibly be starker. They're going from bad to worse. Wait until you see their polling. But first, the crypto markets, they're, shall we say, a little shaky. But this is exactly when patriots win. Let's be clear. Moments like this are unsettling, right? Prices dip, headlines scream, and the so-called experts tell everyday Americans to sit tight and do nothing. But if you studied history, really studied it, you know something crucial. Every major leap forward begins with a pullback. Crypto has never moved in straight lines. It shakes out the weak hands, and then time and time again, it surges higher, rewarding those who understand the moment they were in. This isn't chaos. This is a reset. While political dysfunction and economic uncertainty continue to rattle the system, smart patriots are doing what they've always done. They're staying calm. They're thinking long term. They're positioning themselves for the rebound. That's why so many families, including my own, are turning to Block Trust IRA, not out of panic, but out of confidence. Their Animus AI technology works around the clock, helping safeguard your assets through volatility, bank disruptions, and market whiplash. So you don't have to stare at charts all day wondering what comes next. But here's the inside line. Animus AI doesn't just play defense. It's lying in wait. It's positioned to be the very first one off the starting blocks the second the bull starts running again. And in crypto, it always runs again. This is about building resilience. This is about protecting your family's future. And yes, this is about being ready when the next move up comes, as it always has. Head on over to turleytalkscrypto.com right now and take advantage of a free $2,500 funding bonus when you get started. I've been a longtime client of Block Trust. I love them. I know you will too. Click on that link below right now.
Are voters feeling about Democrats right now?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats in the minds of the American public are lower than the Dead Sea. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look. The net approval rating for Democrats in Congress, you said it, Kate Baldwin, the lowest ever. Look at this. Overall, they are 55 points underwater. Their approval rating is south of 20%. It's even worse when you look at independents. Look at this. Negative 61 points. That means that their approval rating is 61 points lower than their disapproval rating. Quinnipiac has been polling this question for the better part of the 21st century. They have never found Democrats, at least those in Congress, in worse shape than they are right now.
That's Harry Enton of CNN, devastating the hopes and dreams of Democrats for a blue wave in November. It's simply not happening. It's not materializing. Just by comparison, there were already very clear signs by this time in 2018. So according to the RCP, that's the Real Clear Politics polling average that aggregates all the polls, Democrats were already up by 13 by this point in the 2018 midterms when they picked up 40 seats. Now that same RCP polling average shows them up by only 4. By only 4. At most, we're looking at a blue puddle. At most, at this point. There's simply no indication at all for a blue wave. It's just not happening. Quite the contrary. It looks more and more like voters want exactly what Trump and the MAGA movement are delivering. There was a very good piece in Commentary magazine that explains the underlying architecture of this emerging political consensus. It's called The Age of Trump, A Sobering Return to Reality. It's written by Tom Lindbergh. He's a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. And his core argument is really good. Trump isn't defying history in this war with Iran. He's returning to it. He's not defining or defying history. He's returning to it. Remember, MAGA is about making America great again, right? This is about a great return. And what Lindbergh does is, it's very good. He traces the collapse of 3 successive American foreign policy frameworks that were each built on the same fatal progressive realist assumption that history inevitably bends naturally toward liberal democracy, that institutions and free trade and democratic evangelism could somehow tame great power politics, great power rivalries, and that America could lead the world by example rather than by power. Wilson tried it, the League of Nations, they collapsed. Roosevelt tried it, the so-called 4 policemen cooperation. It evaporated the moment Stalin smelled weakness. The post-Cold War establishment tried it. Remember, it's the Fukuyama end of history. They said liberal democracy had won. And then China rose, Russia invaded, Iran built a nuclear program, and the entire framework disintegrated. What Lindbergh is arguing is that the foreign policy consensus that has governed Washington since 1989 was not wisdom, it was fantasy. It was a progressive, realist fraud. And the key here is that Trump voters understood that before the experts did. Trump voters outsmarted the experts. Now, here's the part that'll absolutely destroy the media's narrative about Trump's base, including a number of the doomer podcasters. Lindbergh cites the polling directly. As we just saw, Trump voters are not isolationists. They are hawkish. Polls consistently show that upwards of 90% of MAGA Republicans fully support this war. They want a dominant America. They want a civilizationalist and interventionist America, an America that confronts its enemies with clarity and force rather than apologizing for its power at Davos or trying to neocon nation build ideologically aligned liberal democracies. Operation Epic Fury is Exhibit A of that. And Lindbergh closes with a challenge that sounds almost like it was written for this very moment. What we need to do is reconnect the founding era understanding of power, right? He thinks of like Washington's willingness to ally with France, to fight, to use American strength in service of American interests. We need to align that founding fathers' vision of power with the civilizational confidence of the age of Trump. That's not populist rage. That's not ignorance. That is the oldest and wisest foreign policy tradition America has ever produced, finally coming back to life. And that, I believe, is the intellectual architecture behind every single point in those poll numbers. As it turns out, the people aren't wrong. The experts were, as they always are. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. And as always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button for breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. Love you guys. God bless. Hey, gang, if you want to ask me your questions directly and get real, thoughtful answers, join me every Monday night for our members-only Q&A. It's where we slow things down, think clearly, and dive deep through what's really happening. Links below. Come join us.